Morning, guys. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why and how and what led up to me changing my mind about e-collars. Most people call them shock collars, but I'm also going to explain why I would not, the way I use it, I would not refer to it as a shock collar. And simply put, I'm not frying dogs' brains out. I'm just not. So if like, no matter how it's used, like, you're absolutely not going to be convinced, like, right now, like, no matter what, I don't care what he's got to say from here on out, that's cool, just go on, no need to stick around, it's okay. I get it, but if you're a little bit more open-minded than that, I would invite you to stick around, hear me out, and like why I went from no, I don't think I would ever use an e-collar myself, to yeah, probably, like, and I do now with my new dog. So so let me get started. So before this recent shift in my perspective, okay, just to be clear, I have never ever been for banning any dog training tool, and that, I mean, period. I don't care what the tool is. I just know that bans don't work. Like it makes sense in our industry that, if we ban something, okay, the people who probably train right and do well are probably the ones most likely to follow the law, and therefore are not going to use it. Whereas the guys that don't care, that are frying dogs' brains out, they're going to use them in secret anyway. They're just going to do it. So I don't think banning it is necessarily going to improve that situation. I think instead, like, education, and showing work, showing results, I think that, I think that's the way to go. That's the approach I'm going to take anyway. So I've never been for banning them. I've never been for getting rid of them, outlawing them, anything like that. But I've also not been a fan, and I'll tell you why. So if you've watched my story if you watch my video where I tell Lily's story, okay, Lily had a terrible recall her whole life and never got any better, and it was because of some of the things I did when she was young. So a lot of times she would, like, okay, this is before I was a dog trainer, before I knew anything, right? So she would slip out the front door, or I would let her out even, just thinking, oh, today will be different. And then, of course, she'd stay away for half an hour, whatever, go play, go swim, go do whatever, And then when she'd finally get back, I would get onto her. I'd whoop her. I'd punish her. I'd get onto her. I'd fuss at her. I'd cuss her. I'd whatever. Stupid now. I'm like, what? Because I know dogs don't understand punishment after the fact, right? Like it doesn't make sense. I don't think that they experience time like that. I don't think they, like, if you walk in and your dog's wrecked your couch, but he did it 4 hours ago, and you're punishing him then, I don't think he has any idea why that's going on. Very, very highly unlikely. Mostly that guilty look that you see is more like because you come in confrontational, like, what did you do to my couch, or whatever. So that's just, that's been my, not just an opinion, that's just how it is. I'm going to put it like that. That is just how it is. So, with that, okay, at one point in Lily's life, I got an e-collar because it was so bad. And this was some hunk of junk off Amazon that was like a block this big on the side of her neck. Only had 3 levels, and all of them probably hurt. I would guarantee it. And I guarantee I cranked it up as high as it go. And I do remember, like, the actual event. So, like, I let her out, and I thought, well, she's gonna know what to do. If she gets away, I'll just zap her and she'll come back. That'll be that. And that is not what happened at all. I stepped out the front door. She went outside. I tried to call her back. She totally blew me off. Just kept going because she didn't know any better. And I hit that button, And she yelped and ran around the back of the house and jumped in my mom's swimming pool, and I had to pull her out of that. And thank God that stupid hunk of junk shock collar, because I would call it that with the way I used it right there. Thank God it didn't malfunction and keep shocking her or something like that. I mean, that would be just horrendous. But, you know, I didn't know any better, and I thought that's how you did it, you know. So one thing I want to impress upon you is that the way I'm using it, when I introduce an e-collar, and I don't care what the behavior is or what we're trying to accomplish ultimately, I'm not going to make it I better put most likely, generally speaking, something like that on there, because if you say always or never, there will always be that dog that shows up and proves you wrong. But generally speaking, I'm going to introduce it as a way to get a dog to do a new behavior rather than stop doing something. Like, it's not going to be a punishment necessarily. And I'll explain exactly how that works. So, yeah, okay. And then one last point and I'll move on. A lot of people get hung up on, they're like, well, I just use the vibration setting, you know, and that does the job. So that's, you know, like it's implied that that is better than shocking your dog. So that shock, so to speak, is just like a TENS unit. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But like, I get one used on my back. You know, I've got a bad back, so I get one used on my back at like the chiropractor and stuff like that. And I mean, I have them crank it up as high as they'll go. And technically, yes, it's painful, but like it's making my back muscles contract so that they relax later. It is not the same electricity as like an electric fence or or what's in your wall or your outlets. You know, it's not that tight. I don't know all the, you know, like AC versus DC. I don't know all that. All I'm saying is like it's like a TENS unit, right? So the worst it can do is make a muscle contract. It can't like cause a heart attack. It can't cause physical damage, nothing like that. So, and my experience is that most dogs find the vibration usually more startling than that shock, than that. I'm going to call that STEM, okay? Stimulation, right? Just STEM, because I think that's a more appropriate term for how I use it. So just keep that in mind. When I say STEM, you know, you can think of it as shock, but remember, I'm not shocking dogs. I'm not just frying them. So, my first window into a different use of this tool, okay? So my first time the seed was planted was, all right, I'm gonna shout out to Who's a Good Boy Industries, okay? I followed him on Instagram because I like some of his stuff that he did, and like I don't even remember what led me to him, just like I saw something, I was like, oh, that's neat, it's a good idea. And he was, this day came and I saw a video and he's like, it says something about using a e-collar on a puppy in a crate. And I was like, that's abuse. You know, I was like, oh, I got him now. You know, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, I'm a much better trainer than that. That's horrendous. It's got to be, because I immediately jumped to this assumption that he's going to be hurting this dog in some way to stop a behavior, right? And that wasn't it at all. I hope I'm getting this right. My memory is terrible, but it was something like this, okay? So what this was yes, it was a puppy. Yes, it was in a crate. And yes, it was wearing an e-collar. But what he did was he found the lowest possible level that dog could perceive. So let's say, and I'll get to this in a minute with my own dog, but let's say this e-collar is a high-end one and it's got 100 levels. I have no idea what e-collar he was using, but let's just imagine that. All right, out of 100, he found like the lowest level that dog could perceive, so maybe a 5, like a 5 out of 100. So 100's like, ow, right? Like, bam, you know, like gonna make that neck muscle contract. That is way crazy, right? That would be abuse. That would be crazy. But he's using a 5, right, or something, you know, whatever it was. And like I said, if I remember correctly, he started it right? And the puppy goes he's shrieking in the crate. That's the problem. He's like, like getting anxious and worked up and, panicking because he's in a crate. And they've tried all these other protocols. They've done all these other things. And it starts at that low level. And the puppy goes, what's that? And then the feeling goes away. And then the guy comes back in and rewards the puppy and lets him out. And then they, after a little while, they try it again. Put the puppy in there. He starts to get worked up. And they start that low level. And he goes, what is that? And then the guy reappears. So it's like, it's not, yes, it is, but it's not really meant to stop as in, bam, like this painful sensation will stop you from doing this behavior. So it's like this tiny feeling that you're just curious about. Like, what is that? Like a mosquito whining in your ear or something. And I just thought about that and I was like, that is ingenious. That's brilliant, At this point, I was still determined not to use one because I was still very determined that the average dog owner is most likely going to accidentally abuse their dog. Not like intentionally or anything like that, but like just make rookie mistakes, not be able to read their dog well enough to know what the low level is, the lowest level. So they're actually using too high of a level, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But it was my first window into, okay, there might be a really good use for this. Like that dog's clearly less anxious because of the e-collar. Okay, so my thing as a trainer is, when I tell myself in my head, I am a trainer, you might as well replace that word with teacher. Because I think it is always my duty to teach dogs the behavior I want, right? So I spend very, very little time, almost nothing, no amount of time thinking about how to stop a behavior. I think about how to create a new one. So for instance, if somebody calls me and they say, hey, Colby, my dog's jumping on people, he's driving us nuts, how do I stop him from jumping? I say, okay, well, what would you like him to do instead? Right? So generally speaking, people want at a minimum 4 paws on the floor. They'd love it if the dog would sit to be petted. Okay, so let's work on that. So I never really stop the jumping. I just try to find ways to encourage and reward and create situations that make a sit happen or make 4 paws on the floor happen. So that's kind of my approach to pretty much any problem. Then more complex things like aggression. My job is not really, in my view, my job is not really to stop them being aggressive. I absolutely will to protect somebody else, myself, or another animal. But I'm going to try to create situations where I don't need to stop it and instead try to help them change the way they feel about whatever it is. Without getting too far into it, Kane, that was recently with us, if you don't know or aren't familiar with him, I've got a video where I talk about his story on here. I've got a ton on Facebook, including one that blew up because I used a prong collar for virtually the first time. That's not exactly right, but it's the first time I ever suggested one to an owner because I physically could not control this dog. He was that strong. You'll just have to trust me on that or watch the videos. I'm not going to take up this video with that. But so in that case, once he's wearing that collar, I can't just let him pull into it like I would like a flat collar or harness or something like that. I can't let him create that pressure and then get used to it and then it be just as ineffective as anything else. I have to be able to correct him and stop him from pulling to long-term protect himself, right? Okay. That's like the one dog in forever that I have corrected in that way. It's just not my thing. I'm not trying to change the way. First of all, if you're a trainer watching this, you're not my audience anyway. I love you. I'm super happy to talk to you. I think it's wonderful that you're watching my stuff. That's kind of crazy. But my audience is the average dog owner. So that average dog owner out there, it's not something I would suggest. Not something that like if you come to me with your puppy, I am definitely not going to throw a prong collar on them. It's not my thing. To me, prong collar, even for that job, even for Kane, it was like needing a scalpel and having a hatchet. It's just the wrong tool for the job for me and the way I train. Okay, so I got all that, right? I ran it on that for a little bit. All right. So in the dog training world, there's a lot of talk about the effects of these tools, right? So the fallout, the behavioral fallout is what they call it. So like you might hear in some spaces that if you use these tools for around things like aggression, then they will actually create more aggression, or that any use at all can create fear and stuff like that. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I've got several names I can talk about. Okay. Besides that, Who's a Good Boy Industries, I don't know his actual name, but Larry Crone. Larry Crone, very down to earth guy. His target audience is the average everyday dog owner. Excellent guy, or seems like a real stand-up guy. I mean, seems like a great guy. Well, he explains why that doesn't happen with the dogs he trains, whenever he works with e-collars. Ivan Blavinov, great podcast, Training Without Conflict podcast. He's really hitting this subject hard here lately because of the recent ban of tools in different places, and now it's coming to the States and different places. And like he addresses why that doesn't happen every single time you use these tools. Like what is the reason? Let's see. Justin Rigney, any of the NePoPo family guys, like Bart Ballone, Pat Stewart, Glenn Cook, like any of those dog trainers, maybe I'll tag some in the comments or something. I don't know what to do, but I want the average dog owner to be able to touch on just more than just what I've got to say. But, so the big concern is fallout, that somehow I'm going to create a worse dog because of these tools. And Ivan, I believe, raised a great point in that it's not the tool itself, right, that causes fallout. It's whether the dog understands the contingency upon which the tool is used, right? So let's say that okay, so I'm going to misquote this. I just know I am, but I'm going to do my best, okay? Ivan talks a lot about like tests with like lab mice, lab rats, stuff like that. And I think these are good examples that can kind of give you a window into, what can happen with dogs. It's a long time ago, I'm sure, well, I assume, they have like rats in these boxes, right? And there would be this one patch of floor, right? And if the rat would go on that patch of floor for very long, it would shock them, right? Well, the rats learn very quickly that if I go on this patch of floor, then I will get shocked, okay? Let's say the next box over, they've got one, but it's got 4 patches, so like the floors divided into 4, and it just randomly shocks each one like every 5 seconds. There's no way for the rat to predict which one's going to shock him. There is no contingency upon which he can plan. So they end up shutting down. They go, well, I can't avoid it, so I'm just going to give up, And they call that learned helplessness. And I'm sure I'm misquoting this, man. I'm not a scientist and I'm barely awake. But it gives you a good idea. It's a good example of there is no discernible reason for the animal to understand why this event is taking place. Okay? So, keep that in mind. Whenever dog trainers introduce people, good dog trainers, not bad guys, there's always like a clear contingency upon which this happens, right? So just keep that in mind. That is also going to come up whenever I talk about my dog Lola. All right. There's also a problem with trainers, especially new trainers, and this includes myself. Whenever we first learn how useful these tools can be, we get a little trigger happy and we kind of want to overuse it. I am just very fortunate that I listen to a lot of trainers that do these things, and a lot of trainers coming through these things, and a lot of trainers who have already dealt with this and then had to go back. And, I have no problem, at least in the dog training space, from learning from other people's mistakes. I think that's a strength that I have. And so whenever I hear people talk about, getting a little trigger happy, using it too often, maybe they mess something up that they feel like they could have done better on, had they used it less, I listen. You know, I really perk up to that because I don't, in no way, whether it's like intentional or not, I don't want to create less behavior. I want to create more new good behaviors around, you know, just no matter what. You know, I think one guiding principle in my life is open-mindedness. And without getting too far out into the weeds, I just think that's a super important thing to have. I would have never found out about any of this if I wasn't willing to listen to trainers who I disagreed with. I still, okay, there's several, I'm not going to talk about it because I want to crap talk these guys, but there's still a few things I disagree with Ivan Blavinov on. He's won like world championships for like bike sport stuff. It kind of grosses me out for me to say that out loud, but there are some things. Maybe I'll learn as I go along. Maybe a little further in my career I'll understand. But it's just, I mean, like, it just how it is. I've never met anybody I agreed on absolutely everything with. But, you know, so his podcast, Larry Crone's Facebook, Justin Rigney, some of his Facebook, Bart Ballone, the whole New Popo family, Pat Stewart, Glenn Cook have the Canine Paradigm podcast. I love that. Just different stuff like this. I listen to every side. I also love Denise Finzi. I love Finzi Dog Sports Academy. I attended the Lemonade Conference last year, which is like an online conference for force-free trainers. I take fairly regular, probably quarterly webinars to try to learn new things, new techniques. I'm always looking for more positive techniques, you know, like positive reinforcement techniques to put under my belt, just like I'm looking for everything else. Any way that I can go about to create new behavior, I'm looking for. So, you know, like, it's not just like, you know, I'm just hardcore these guys. Like, no, there's things I disagree with, but they're right on this. Yeah, okay. So now I get into clients that I've worked with. So I'm going to try to move through this a little faster. So the first time in my professional career that I touched an e-collar was, I won't use any names, but I got called to go to this person's house. It was about 2 hours away. And my understanding was, hey, we're going to just work on normal puppy stuff, right? Or, you know, like young dog stuff or whatever. And I get there and I walk in the door and they put an e-collar in my hand. And they said, will you show me how to use this? And I was like, I really don't know all that well. And they're like, well, that's what you're here for. You know, I don't know about everybody else out there, but I'm not rich. So like, I cannot afford to travel 2 hours and then walk away from an appointment. So I just can't. So I taught what I knew. You know, I understood a little bit about low level use, things like that. Like, I understood a little bit about that, so we used it. Very successful. The dog was fine, right? Okay, so then, and this is like all kind of happening at the same time, like that whole video I saw with the puppy in the crate, and then I'm listening to these podcasts, and then this person happens. Next was a long-term client, and I got her permission to talk a little bit specifically about her. This is Christina, and then Atlas the service dog, and he's her diabetic alert dog. Okay, and just to understand how important his role is in her life, he can, on his good day, on his best days, he can alert her faster than her blood sugar monitor that's like attached to her can tell her that she's dropping or skyrocketing, and she can get ahead of that. Super crucial. I mean, potentially life-saving for sure. And so she called me and she was like, listen, Atlas is chasing cars. He's chased him out to the road. He's almost got hit. I just don't know what to do, you know, and they live on a farm now, which is a change for Atlas anyway. And there was like all these things. And, you know, I just knew, I was like, we don't have the luxury of taking the scenic route. We don't have the luxury with that. Like, he's got an important role in her life that saves her life. And we've got to be able to address this. Right. So there's a lot of different ways I could have handled it. I could have used really high levels, created a superstitious belief about chasing cars, things like that. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, done appropriately, you know, with a professional. But what I chose to do instead was low level, right? She would take her car and start moving it, and I had him on a 30 foot leash, right? Because we don't start just zapping him, okay? And he starts to move toward the car, and I start this very low level, and he goes, "What is that?" And now he's no longer chasing the car. So now I let go, and I recall him, and I reward him, right? Because he's got a great recall. He's got all that. He just could not resist following her car, especially her car, out to the road. So, so she goes up her driveway, comes back down, circles back around, same thing. Like, he starts to go toward it. I start that low level, and then he goes, "What is that?" And then I'm like, "Hey, buddy, come here." And then I turned off and reward him, and we keep going. Okay, so do that several times. By the end of it, I did it. I drove in my car, right? Because I'm the dope dealer. I've got the cheese that I bring, all these yummy treats and stuff like that. So he's very excited about me. He's like, "No, don't leave." So she got to do it. And before I left, within roughly an hour appointment, he was laying in the grass beside her, just watching me drive past. And then I hit it off, and like, perfect. Couldn't ask for anything better. Okay. Next would be Jethro. Okay. So Jethro's big German Shepherd. He is owned by some of the most wonderful people I know. One of these days I'm going to do a video just on them and their success. But he's a big dude, and they are not big people. And he can, with no additional leverage, he could pull them. I've seen him pull his mom down, like face first into the ground. I mean, he's a strong dog. So they had begun using a prong collar. And at that time, I was still pretty uncomfortable with using them myself. I absolutely will, and I 100% understood the need for it with them so that they could control him enough to even take him out to potty or anything like that. I got it. Like, that's there's no problem there. That's not the issue. My thing was, like, I just want to find a better way to create new behavior. So we introduced the e-collar. And we're still working on it because we've got some other issues that he has. He's very high drive, and he has problem engaging with them because they can't engage in as rough a play as he likes to do. Whereas I can. So, like, if I've got him, I feel like in most situations I could have him off leash and handle him pretty well. But like, I can also recall him and then play tug whenever his 100-pound butt comes flying at me like a rocket. I can catch him and tug, but like, they can't. So like, that reward can't be as exciting. So like, we're still working on it. But anyway, we introduced it in several different little ways, right? So primarily I like it with recall, and then I don't really use it with much else. I do use it with some things, just like these other things I've talked about, but for the most part, that's the vast majority, okay? So with Jethro, we tried a few things with the low-level stem. So like, you can do, like, so think of that low level, the lowest level they can perceive, as just a little bit of pressure, right? So the way I think of it is like, if my oldest son, right, he's 9, his name's Aiden, okay? Let's say we're walking up to somebody I know, but he's never met. Like, a lot of times they'll be like, "Well, who's this?" And I'll be like, "Hey, go introduce yourself." And like, okay, so I don't know how to do this. So like, if this is his back, right? So, okay, person's this way, right? My son's right here. Then I might be like, "Hey, buddy, go shake their hand. Go introduce yourself," and just give them a little push forward, Think of this low-level e-collar use like that. It's just that little push in the right direction, right? I'm not gonna shove him into him and be like, "Give him a hug, son. What are you doing?" Like, that would be the same thing as zapping dogs right off the bat. Like, it's just messed up. But like, that little push in the right direction, like, "Hey, over there. That's where you want to go," or toward me, like, push back toward me, like, "Hey, come on." So, we incorporated that a little bit with Jethro. We would start that low level, then ask for a sit, and he'd snap into that sit so fast, and then we'd have like great rewards, And now he's like you know, that kind of stuff is fast and snappy, and now we don't even really use it for that. Now we're just focused on recall. But I like that we introduced it to that because those were well-known commands, and he already found those fun and rewarding, just those simple obedience things. But he, you know, he already found those rewarding, but he now we paired the e-collar pressure with it, and now, like, I can't say for sure that like any dog loves the e-collar, but like if they know that pressure leads to reward, you know, like, can't that become a good thing? I don't see why not, you know? So, all right, one more before we get to my dog. Stitzel, the Corgi puppy. Super cute as button. This is one that is a little intermittent on success. Sometimes it is phenomenal, especially in the backyard, which was their main problem. But honestly, I'll just be honest. I thought we'd be off leash by now. And like last week, we went to like a very empty park area, and excuse me. We went to like this very empty park area. Had a 30-foot leash on because we don't just put dogs in situations that we don't know for sure they can handle. And we tried recall, and like sometimes she could, sometimes she wouldn't. My guess is that this is a problem that is very common, I think, of them not being able to feel it because of their hair. So if you think about corgis, they've got long-ish hair, at least that thicker coat. And like if dead hair is built up underneath there, that can get in the way of those prongs that sit on the neck, and then that sensation doesn't come through, or it doesn't come through strong enough to feel, or whatever. So, excuse me. So I think probably that's what we're dealing with. We're going to try to troubleshoot that this week and kind of go over that and see if we can make that better. But I don't want to give you this false impression that every single time I use it, it's super successful, because it's not. That's just not realistic. It's not always going to be, especially because I'm fairly new to this. You know, I wouldn't do anything with anybody else's dog that I wouldn't do with my own. But but what was I going to say? Okay, so I wouldn't do anything with anybody else's dog that I wouldn't do with my own, but I also kind of have to, I don't know where I was going with that. I'm so sorry, guys. But anyway, we're just going to troubleshoot that, try to figure it out, and then I'll come out a better trainer and know how to resolve that issue in the future. All right, now we get to Lola, right? So I told you about Lily. Whenever she was alive, terrible recall. She was very limited on freedom she could have, very limited in what she could do, access to what, you know, and all this. Right now, as of the last 4 days, I believe, we're totally off leash in my in our little bitty neighborhood, with houses 100 feet away on both sides and across the street. You know, like distractions all around, dogs walking by, all that, you know, and we're totally off leash. And I cannot be happier. She's got so much freedom compared to any other dog I've ever owned. I did this in some certain ways, right? And I'm going to make some like precise instructional videos of exactly how I did it going into the future. But essentially, right, we started out on a like a 10-foot leash, a little longer than your normal leash, just so she could kind of get away from him. And I had her daily meal with me, so like her dog food. Instead of putting it in a bowl, I just kept it in a pouch, and I would train her with it. And you don't necessarily have to do that part. You know, if you watch my other videos, I know a lot of you got pet dogs and you don't spend that much time training. That's cool. I've got other solutions for that, but this is what I did with Lola. So I've got her food with me. So let's say we're walking down the sidewalk and she gets up ahead of me. Right before she hits the end of that leash, I'll start the stem and it stays on, right? So I'll start it. I'll say, Lola. The second she turns back toward me, then I'll let go of that, right? And then she gets to me and she gets rewarded. And what happens is that little bit of pressure always predicts that I'm going to recall her, which makes her orient back to me. and then she gets there, and I give her some reward. And I would do this through every meal, every meal, every meal. I've had her almost, let's see, almost 2 months and 1 week. Okay. I'd say the first month was nothing but this. We went from 10-foot leash very consistently, probably the first 2 weeks, to a 30-foot leash. That way she got even further away from me and it was still the same rules. And then I did just like I did with Cooper, which I'll kind of touch on. Because I never used an e-collar with Cooper, and I can still have him off leash most places, but it took much longer to achieve this. So I, but like the 30-foot leash, at first I'm still holding the handle, but she's got 30-foot leash. Then I start dropping the handle, right? And now she could technically get away, but I've got 30 feet of line to catch up to if she gets distracted or whatever happens, like something I can't anticipate happens that distracts her, that gets her away from me. I've got 30 feet of line I can catch up to. So, and then, so like I keep building that relationship. And I did this every day. Every bite of food that she had, except for like maybe 4 days, come through my hands. Almost all of it, except for here lately, came for recall, like come when called. I would set up situations where I could surprise her. I've got several recall games that I teach that you can find other places, like on Facebook and stuff like that. But yeah, like we just practice this. So it's not like this is a magic button that like zap and they're going to come to you. It's like, it still takes work, but it's like a great communication system. It's that little push in the right direction. Just like that example I used with my son. It's just like, hey, come back this way. Great things are going to happen. Oh, okay. Now you can go play because I know you can reliably come back. So now you can get away from me. Like no big deal. You want to go chase that bird? That's fine. But if I call because you're about to run into the road, great. Just come back. Cool. Now I got a frisbee for you. Now I got whatever, like I've got good things. So, yeah, so that is pretty much my system for recall training. Like I said, we're off leash in our little bitty neighborhood, which I just never thought was going to be possible. It's incredible. Now, what I did with Cooper was pretty much the same thing, except I took my time, right? So I did 10-foot leash. I rewarded, and at that time I wasn't working him through his meals, so I was using high value treats like cheese and stuff like that. I went from like 10-foot leash to 30-foot leash, and then at one point I had a 50-foot leash and a 100-foot leash, and we were living in a very different area where we had a big backyard with fields around, and I would use like a chuck it with tennis balls, and I would launch that thing out and he'd run back to me. So like that pattern got established without me actually recalling him, of going really far from me and still coming back. I had a huge amount of line to be able to catch up to if he blew me off, or I don't like to say blew me off, like he just didn't understand the exercise yet. But like if he decides like, oh, I'm going to dig for these moles instead of engage with you, it's like, no, come on, we're working on this. Come on. Let's keep having fun. Different stuff like that. Then I added in distractions and I started shortening the leash, and then I just got rid of the leash altogether. I've kind of covered this in other places. So this is my essentially force-free way of training the exact same thing. It can definitely be done with many dogs, but I don't think you have to take that long. I'm not sure why you would anymore, other than just if you're just no matter what opposed to e-collar use, which is kind of silly the way I use it, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. It's just the way I use it. Like no dog's in pain or fearful or anything like that. If it was, I'd stop immediately. I'm not gonna continue that at all. Like emotions of the dog in front of me are the most important thing, way more important than specific behaviors like obedience or anything like that. It's like if I'm not preserving the way that they feel or even encouraging them to feel better, I'm not doing my job. So so that's kind of gives you an idea of what I did with Cooper versus Lola, and why I feel like the Lola method is superior. And, I didn't invent any of this stuff, okay? I'm not like the inventor of low-level stem, e-collar use. Like I said, for the average dog owner, Larry Crone. Can't really beat that. If you're like a a dog trainer, or like you at least train your own dogs, maybe like Who's Good Boy Industries would be great. And if you're like a professional dog trainer, like you do like me, and you just happen to stumble upon my video, first of all, thanks. You know, that's really flattering. But also maybe check out Ivan Blabanov, Bart Ballone, all the Nepopo family, like all those guys. Like just check them out. You know, take what you need and leave the rest. You know, I don't agree with them on everything, but they got it figured out. They got something special going on. So I just wanted to talk with you guys about that. I haven't made a secret about using it. Like, it's always been on Lola in just about all my videos. So, you know, if you're savvy and you've noticed that, here you go. I just wanted to make sure that I compiled several examples to talk about, because I didn't want to just be like, hey, look how I trained this recall with the e-collar without any more context than that. And then somebody go out and get that cheap one from Amazon, put that big block on their dog's neck and zap the crap out of them. Like, no, man, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, you don't have to. There's a better way. So I just wanted you guys to, you know, see that, you know, hear that, understand that. I really appreciate all you guys, man. Like, I had that video with Kane and the prong collar, and like I talked to my previous video, you know, that was never meant to showcase my best training. That was supposed to highlight my mistakes, and then that way I could come back and be like, well, this is how I did better in the future. But like, there's so many. I think it's got 7-something thousand views now, and like, I don't even know, like hundreds of comments, people just bashing me, you know. Like, I had to turn off notifications for it, I'm not gonna lie. I really never thought anything on social media would get to me like that, because I don't engage with that negativity, but it did. It started to bother me, started to lose some sleep. So I just had to turn off notifications. But it has not escaped my notice that a lot of you guys stood up for me, took up for me, because you know me. You know I'm a man of integrity. You know I'm not doing anything in private that I wouldn't do in public, and that you trust me. And it does not escape me how important that is, or how, what's the word? Like, precious, how precious that is, how precious your trust is to me. It is so important, and I never want to violate that trust. That's why I'm always going to be willing to show my mistakes, no matter what strangers on Facebook say, or strangers on YouTube. You know, it just is what it is. Like, sometimes I don't do the right thing, you know, and like, but with this subject in particular, with the e-collars, I feel like I'm doing it right. I feel like maybe I'm doing better than I ever have. And I'm really proud of that. I wanted you guys to know that there's an option out there if you want to begin to work on things like that. You know, get a great recall to where maybe you can have your dog off leash in some places. So yeah, I just want you guys to digest that and think about it. And thank you so much for listening. Please drop a like on this video, share it with your friends, tell people, you know, and just let me know how you feel about it. You know, tell me in the comments. I don't mind a rational, friendly discussion. If you don't come at me rude, if you come at me politely, no matter what your opinion, I will absolutely engage with you. If you come at me rude, you're never going to hear from me. So thank you so much. Thanks, guys. I'll shut up now. So thank you. Bye.